What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Marshall, and it is my goal with each episode of this podcast to share the stories, strategies, tactics, tools, and resources that will help you establish or grow your martial arts school. The Black Belt Business Podcast is brought to you by Easton.Online. You can find all of our digital courses, martial arts curriculums, and resources designed to help you enhance your business at Easton.Online. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Fellas, what's up? How are you?
Doing awesome. How are you?
I'm well. Mike, how are you?
Good afternoon, Elliot. Good afternoon, Ian. Good to see you both.
Man, we haven't been together in a minute, all in the same spot. So I think only at events, maybe the belt promotion, we were all together, right?
Belt motion, Christmas party.
Yeah.
Oh, Christmas party. Yeah.
That was much better because we were in person. We're still not, we're sort of together looking at you guys through a computer monitor, but I'll take it.
It's almost that. I can look worse because I'm at home versus all done up for you, but you know.
Yeah, it happens. So, man, just so everybody understands what we're doing here and who you guys are. Mike, I just got done Rocket Fuel, which for everyone who's listening, it was a really great book and a really great read for me. And it talked about the idea of integrator and visionary and the relationship and the different roles that each one play. It asked to get rid of the titles CEO, CFO, COO, and all, and maybe not CFO, I don't know. But you want to think more of who's the visionary, who's the integrator. And Mike, you are the integrator of all of Easton, and you do an amazing job at it. So that is your role. And Ian, you are the VP of all of the general managers now, correct?
Yeah, I think the title that we sort of landed on is director of the general managers.
Director of the general managers.
Yeah.
We don't want to give him VP too soon. We took it away and then we'll build it back up again.
I got teased with it.
It's just so everyone can see we make mistakes. We make all kinds of mistakes too. And Mike, you're an integrator. Real fast, explain the role of an integrator, okay, in any company and specifically kind of in this company. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, the light side of it is the integrator is often frustrated because he just sees problems everywhere that he wants to fix by getting things organized. So there's a lot of this, like trying to figure out what those problems are. Like if something exciting happens, the first thing the integrator comes to mind is like, okay, is it executable? How do we execute it? What are the problems that are going to arise when we try to execute? Who's that going to affect? How are we going to pay for it? How does this fit into the systems? So on and so forth. It's a lot of that. Like as soon as an idea comes, the integrator quickly is like, how do we implement this into our current systems? So for me in this role, in this seat, a lot of people have ideas, and my job is mostly to try to make sure we can execute those ideas, solve problems, and run the business, with the visionary's idea in place and turning that idea into something concrete that can be pushed down through all the businesses. We could talk Easton, we could talk all martial arts, business in general though. Like visionary's idea, how do we make it real? What does that look like?
That's Mike's role. Ian, real fast, explain your role, your new role here as the director of GMs.
Yeah, well, being honest, I'm learning about this new role. Essentially, though, the idea is that I'm looking at it right now like I'm here to support all of our GMs and to help them be successful. While doing so, to keep everybody in alignment, to keep everybody sort of trying. I would say. Mike just kind of said it, the visionary, he's helping push down that vision. That is also, I view what I'm tasked with doing specifically with the general managers, making sure that we're executing on the vision, that we're keeping, the operations and the are in line, and that the product is that everything is being executed on the way it should be, but all the while trying to do so in a supportive way. That's really what I'm focusing on right now. But I'm learning for sure. I've only been in the role for a month officially. So
right. So and the reason I want to do this before we jumped into the topic of today was because the roles, Mike, your role is the same. I would say since the first time you were on the podcast. I think you have fleshed it out more to really bring some understanding to the role. And I think Ian, when you were on the podcast, you were only the GM of Denver. So,
Yep.
and now you have moved along from the GM of Denver, and we're not hiring, we're bringing on moving somebody up from the another role in Denver to be the GM, and you're going to oversee all GMs. So just a little introduction for that. And I'm one of the visionaries that is a pain in Mike's ass. Unfortunately for Mike has two visionaries with me and Amal. So he gets to deal with a whole host of stupid ideas and boxers and texts from two people, not just one.
Well, to tighten that up a bit though, like to look
Yeah.
at this company in a way like more like that's more the more normal culture. Like if you looked at it from that realm, right? It's like I'm essentially the president, and then we have the directors underneath. So we have our finance, we have our administration, we have our operations, right? And we have our studio manager, and then we have our program directors. So like the program directors, like what all of you, those are also visionaries in their own way, right? So we have somebody in charge of each martial arts program at Easton. And so I'm just saying there's a Amal and Elliot, but there's also those program directors that are there to like come up with great ideas and what's best for the program. So there's more than just Amal and Elliot that are a pain in my ass. I mean,
that's the key point.
That's the key point. Mike has so many people that are a pain in his ass. Now, look, the reason that we are here today, guys, is because we are coming through this pandemic. And we made it through the pandemic. And I think there are a lot of lessons that we learned. I think there are a lot of things that Mike, you and Ian had set up pre-pandemic, the accountability chart and things like this, that really crushed it for us so that we could really maneuver the pandemic well, core values and a whole host of things. So we are really here to discuss today what the pandemic was like for us, how we dealt with the pandemic, because I doubt there will be another March 13th, 2020, right? In our lifetimes. Most likely, there won't be another pandemic that shuts us down, but there's going to be ebbs and flows of the economy. There's going to be There's going to be recessions, and they're all very similar in how we deal with all of that stuff, uptime, good times and bad times. So let's talk about the worst of times. Okay. First, how did we decide to close the schools, right? How did we make this decision? So, Mike, from your perspective, because I have my perspective, but you go from your perspective, what was that decision like for you?
Well, the beautiful thing is nothing ever feels like it's just on my shoulders. So there's a whole team of people that help with these decisions. Like Amal and Elliot were a big part of the process during whether to shut down the schools or not. Like we try to keep them out of the day-to-day, but like when it came to something that big, it's really important that the visionaries are part of that discussion because, it's their baby. It's all of our babies in your own, however you want to slice it, but it's important as they're the major stakeholders and shareholders that they're a big part of that decision. So I want to make sure that's super clear. So we have the visionaries, then we have the team, the leadership team trying to figure out what that looks like. And for us to come to that conclusion, it wasn't that challenging because we were forced to close by the government. So,
well, I think we closed before the government, right? I think the three of us, me, you, and Amal, got on a phone call.
We struggled with it. Like we went back and forth. And honestly, from what I recall, it was 2 years ago. From what I recall, it was challenging, like the social pressure and the government not saying to do so, being unclear what the virus really was. There was so many challenges just to make a decision. And finally, and this is one thing that I try to be good at, and Elliot's actually really good at this as well, is we just made a decision. We're like, we have to decide. We can't keep racking our brains. And this is what business, in my opinion, often comes down to. You can explore the data endlessly. And then it's like, we just have to decide, and we're going to lose sleep and make ourselves crazy unless we make a decision. So we looked at the data, we had a conversation, we had a vote, we agreed to it and said we're closing, and then we passed it down to the GMs, and the GMs took it off and ran with it. And then we came up with an action plan how to maintain relevant while we were closed.
Okay, so we're going to get to that. The reason I wanted to bring up the decision was because the decision was 2-1. It was me and you close, Amal, no. That was the decision. Okay, at the time. Obviously he would have closed later, but the day that we closed, I think this is a really important topic to talk about. We've never spoken that publicly until today. And no one knew that it was a 2-to-1 decision, because we have an agreement between all of us and throughout the whole company, which is disagree and then commit. Or how do we say it?
That's it. Disagree and commit.
Disagree and commit. Because I don't think, Ian, did you know it was 2-to-1? Me and Mike and Amal said stay open a little longer.
If I did, I may have forgotten. But it's not ringing a bell.
Right. It was most likely not, because that wasn't the decision, but we disagreed and then we committed. Amal never said a word that he was like, I think we should stay open. Right. This is I would say a super key thing with dealing with bad times, right? Like you must do this. Talk a little bit about how we do that at Easton, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, I think and I agree with you, we're really talking about here is that when there's a decision that's going to be made, and the door closes, and the people who are important in this decision-making process, there's going to be disagreement in that room. But once we bring whatever the decision is to the public, that we walk out a united front. And that has to be that way, I feel like, in pretty much every tier of leadership. Because if you think about parents, right? And I'm not a parent, but both of you are. I'm sure this has happened where one parent has one opinion about how something should go and the other parent has another, right? And then if the parents aren't united on the decision, the kids start to learn that they can play one parent against the other. I mean, that's certainly what I did as a kid. And so, it's very important. The whole disagree and commit thing is like, yeah, we can disagree. That's a healthy relationship. Healthy relationships, there's disagreement. The question is, how are we going to present the conclusion, whatever conclusion it is we come to, how are we going to present that to the people who matter, whether it's our students or it's your kids, because that's the difference. That's where the relationship gets to either stay healthy or become dysfunctional. But that's how I think about it. And I think we do a very good job at this at Easton.
Mike, how do you pass the information down? Because that's the next important piece. What if you, in your role as the integrator, you disagree? Right.
I'm human, and I've been known to be volatile, and been known to speak my mind. So I haven't always excelled at this, but I do very much agree with the idea, and it's something that I've had to lean into hard, because there's been plenty of time. This took some time to accomplish, the disagree and commit with us three. More so for me, I think, because I think we did our session in the room, you, me, and Amal, as the owners and the decision makers for big problems, and it was challenging at first. And it was something that there was one incident where I didn't agree, and I made it known, but I said I'll still support it. But I didn't do a good job with it, right? So I still, not to bring that issue up, but what I'm trying to point out is it is a challenge, and you're probably going to fail at first unless you're really excel at this. So to pass it down, it's like what we've come to realize is if it's a high level ownership decision, I gather everyone's information, on the leadership team. And then I go to Amal and Elliot and we talk about it and we hear their opinions, and everybody makes their case. And my case is usually made through the collective minds of everybody that reports to me, to make sure I give them a fair shot at the table. And then we vote, right? And no matter how annoying or rough it is, once the vote is done, we go, all right, that's what we're doing. And we move on. And then we go down and say, hey, this is what we decided as a group. Came to a vote, and this is where we're at. And we don't, and again, this is where I made a mistake in one incident, that we don't show our disagreement. Like, hey, we don't always agree, but this is what we're committed to as a company. And we ask the same thing on the leadership level. Like, hey, get out what you need to get out. We want to make sure you're heard. But once you're heard, you can't carry it with you later, right? And I say this explicitly because this is really hard for me too, because you're leaving the resentment behind. You get your chance to speak, you disagree, but the door closes, you walk away on the same team.
We've said a couple times here, leadership team. Okay.
Yeah.
And we greatly know what that term means, because
of course
you talk to them every day, Mike, right? And Ian's part of that leadership team. I am not.
Correct.
Right. So explain leadership team, please.
Well, for us, it's the decision makers in each department, right? So for our school, we have our own names for things, but we have our director of admin and operations. So Sarah Rochniak sits in that seat, and she handles all the administrations and helps a lot of operational stuff in the background. We have our director of general managers. That's Ian. He's in charge of all the general managers. We have director of martial arts. That's Alex Huddleston. He runs all of the martial arts program directors. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Kids Jiu-Jitsu, Kids Muay Thai, kickboxing. So they report to him. And then we have our, our finance and legal. We're not big enough, so I have those outside. I use them as consultants, but I don't bring them into the leadership team. And we also have two other high-level people on the team that don't report to me, but their perspective is extremely important. So Valor Caballero has been doing this since 2006, 7. So he has a seat at the table in the leadership team. And then Van Tran, who's our creative director, who just has been sitting in the seat of AOD, which is there you go, perfect, which is basically admin in the background for the general manager. So we have people on this team, as you can see, that are vital to the decision-making process. So I collect their information up here and bring it to Amal and Elliot, and then we discuss and vote.
So everyone can understand here what we're talking about. This and when if someone were to come on and start working with Easton.Online, this is one of the first things we handle, and it's called the accountability chart. Okay, where look, here are the owner's boxes. Amal and Elliot up top. Mike is the integrator / CEO, which is his role. And now look, when we're talking leadership team, this is what Mike is talking about here. Look, these two over here, where my mouse is, CFO and legal, is the fractional pieces. Okay, they are Mike's direct reports, but not really, right? They're not in the actual business of Easton only. But now here are the departments: marketing, operations. This is Sarah Rosniak. This is the director of general managers. Ian, the director of all of the martial arts programs, which is Alex Huddleston, and then Valor Caballero over here as the he attends. And who's the other one, Mike, that attends? Oh, Van Tran. Yep. Okay, now look, I'm over here as the Easton.Online visionary because it's just another wing of Easton, but I do not attend the leadership meeting. But this is what we do. This is our leadership team, and this is how we spread decisions. Let's look farther down this chart here so people can really start to understand and how we set up Easton. Now look, this new role that Ian has, the director of martial arts. So if COVID were again to happen today, it wouldn't be Mike talking to the general managers, okay? Who it mostly would be Ian, because that's his job. Mike would be talking here to the leadership team. Okay. And in that leadership team, they would then pass to their people below them. So that is, sorry, Jordan or Mike, cut that out. Phipps. So back on. Now with the GMs, with Ian. Now, Ian, these are your direct reports. These are the GMs of all of the schools, for example. Okay. Now you talk to all of these people. So if something were to happen, okay, and Mike and the leadership team decided, Ian, you would then be giving information to the GMs, correct?
Yes.
And how would you do that?
So in a lot of different ways. We have a lot of different ways we communicate. We have our weekly meeting, right? But if it's something more urgent, we use Voxer, which is it's a piece of software, it's an app, and we all are in the same channel. And then I meet with each one of them. So we meet in a group. We have like our traction meetings. We meet in a group every week, but I also meet with each general manager individually for a half hour every week. And then I spend time at their academies. So there's a lot of different ways we communicate, but if it's more system stuff and it's just like the kind of routine business, it's going to be in the meetings in the same pages. But when it's a little bit more urgent or there's something that needs to take place right away, right, we can hop on Voxer, we can schedule, we can, like, because I'm assuming you're asking if we had to close down, if it was something like that, and that might even be Mike, the two of us communicating with the general managers if it's serious enough, right? Like there might not be enough time to meet with them individually, so we'll probably just blast it out on Voxer. But yeah,
to the GMs then, right?
To the GMs, yeah, exactly. But
you would not be calling each employee.
No.
And Mike, you would not be communicating with.
No, we have, it's much like Slack, right? We just use Voxer because it's for discussion purposes. It's just like a walkie-talkie, right? versus having to call everybody. You can have a broadcast on them like, hey, everybody, listen, we are going to be closed because of this is happening. We will give you more details momentarily, but I need you to start closing down and updating your social medias. I will have our social media person send you the flyer you're going to put up. Just please stand by in your email. I just want to make sure you all have the announcement ahead of time, so they have an idea that something is coming. And then we'd blast all the stuff they need to do in an email to them so they could take those emails and take action on them. And then if they have questions, they can reach out and ask questions about the items that are coming their way.
Now, my question to you guys is, how does the jiu-jitsu teacher or the Muay Thai teacher know that we're closed? Because they're for sure not getting a message from you, Mike, right? Because it's your
it's got to go me to the leadership team, and then the leadership team to their reports, which in Ian's case are the general managers. And then the general manager will speak to the department heads, and the department heads of their location will speak to their staff on the front lines. So we have our frontline staff, department heads, general managers, director of GMs, myself.
Cascades.
And it just cascades down. And you know that by looking at the accountability chart, and everybody has Voxer communication channels built off of the accountability chart. So they know who to communicate with and how. So it cascades down.
So this was a major part of us having to deal with COVID, right? Because
super quick pivots, right? It just moves down the chart. Okay. And the chart is for us very long because 7 schools. But for you guys that are listening here, maybe 1 school, your chart is not very big, right? So an individual school's accountability chart is not that large. Okay. When you put them all together, it looks all crazy like ours does. That being said, I think
a fractal.
It's important that they still build it out. And if you looked at the chart, my name is in multiple areas because I can't fill that seat yet. So it's important that, like, if you're going to build a school out, that you should put your chart in place. So like, let's say it's the general manager, and then you have kids DH, jiu-jitsu DH, Muay Thai DH, and head of front desk. Maybe you're the GM as well as all those people at first.
That's how we start every young school. Every young school, when we start a school, that's how it is. Right?
And then as you hire up, kids department head usually first, then you replace that person. Yeah.
Right. You replace yourself. Right. So, you are going to be all of the roles. And this is something, again, that we help schools with when they do jump on with us to set up, their accountability chart so that they know whose role is what. The hard part with the accountability chart sometimes, Mike, is that different roles, right? You would say, you sent a really good email today to, I think, me and Amal. Who am I talking to? It was an email about who is an employee talking to? Are they talking to Elliot, the visionary who's up there at the top? Or are they talking to Elliot, the guy who teaches jiu-jitsu on Tuesday and Thursday from 5 until 7:30? So which one are they talking to? And it's important when you're in different roles in the company that you follow the rules of those roles. Correct?
Correct. Otherwise it gets really muddy, and it's really challenging for the staff to figure out what to do next because they don't know who to listen to.
Yes. Yeah. And this gets hard. This is hard for me, right? This is where it's hard for me. And this is where I probably mess up sometimes is, I'll give an easy example of how a person can mess up in these communications of roles is if somebody comes up to me and asks how to sign up and what the procedures are to sign up. And if I start being like, well, it's like this and like that, and then you do this, and I'm training the employees on how to sign somebody up when that's not my job at all. Right? Like I do no training on how to sign somebody up. If they have that kind of a question, they go talk to who, for example, the front desk person, the department head of front desk, correct?
If I in our shoes, but yes, front desk
or GM. So, there were times now switching back to this difficulty of dealing with COVID. Some of the things that we did was we did hold all hands meetings where students could be on and all of that, right?
Halls, yep.
What's that?
They're called town halls. So people could ask questions.
Right. So how did we structure those town halls?
Yeah. So really quick answer on this, and we're still doing it. We do it every month. But that was a little bit different. The town hall was just a link that we sent out to every single member and staff member saying, hey, we're going to put a town hall. Please submit questions beforehand or ask them during the town hall. and we gave them a link to fill out questions beforehand, anonymously, as well as an opportunity to ask questions during the live stream. And that was, a certain leadership people. I think I was in it. Elliot, were you in some of them?
I was in all of them. Yeah.
Elliot was in all of them. Ian, Valor. I think that was the group of people, maybe some other people. But essentially, yeah, it was like the people we thought would be the most useful to answer questions. And we got very few questions, but we made sure we did it over and over again so people could always ask questions.
And I would say we probably over communicated with people.
We tried to.
We were very clear and transparent about what we did, I would say. And nobody knew our personal feelings. Well, we tried to, wouldn't you say? The mask, the not mask, anything, I think was a very large part for us on, especially, it's been harder lately probably, but in the beginning of the pandemic, we were very neutral, I would say, on our personal feelings on what should be happening. We just handled business. Yes, no thoughts there?
Yeah, I think sorry, go ahead, Ian.
No, I was gonna say, I think you nailed it with there was a word you used, the word transparency. I think that becomes very important, especially when you have this sort of this cascading system of communication, right? It's nice sometimes for everybody to hear the sort of the top end of the leadership team speaking about what the plans are. I think what you're asking, Elliot, and I would agree with it. It's we didn't let our own opinions about whether we like masks or don't like masks or how severe we thought COVID was or wasn't. We didn't let that creep into the picture when we were having, when we were having these all hands meetings. What we're just trying to do is operate the best we can, and serve our members the best that we possibly can while doing what we could to stay open, or to close or to be in line with whatever was needed at the time. But yeah, I think as a general rule, not having our political opinions, whatever they may be, because look, there's people on the leadership team who have different political opinions. That's, again, like that's a big part of this, right? Is we didn't all agree, but it goes back to the initial disagree and commit, which we've already spoken about. Right. It's like at some point you have to, we're a team, and when you're a team, you do what's best for the team. So yeah, I think not letting our politics creep into our thinking and decision making was important.
How do you guys do that? Right. That's my question, because how do you, because a lot of times when people disagree, they speak in a way that ain't so cool. Right. Like I got a text message yesterday that wasn't so cool, and it's going to be hard to come back from. We won't come back from it, most likely, So, and that's a problem. Like if the text message, for example, was left unwritten, right? Like all of it could still be true in minds, but once you speak it to the world, it becomes a problem.
Well, go ahead, Mike. I have my own opinions on this. Well, I don't know. I would. And whatever the text message is, does it have to be that way, right? Do we have to be at a place where we're never willing to forgive anybody for misspeaking? I don't know, or for maybe they didn't misspeak and they meant everything they said. But, I think in general, giving each other more space to be human beings is a good thing. We all make mistakes. We all say things we shouldn't. We all say things we didn't mean, or mean things maybe we meant what we said, but then we don't mean it after we said it. You know what I mean? There's a lot that can creep in there, but I think because the initial question was, how do we disagree?
How do we communicate with each other when disagreeing, so that there isn't this like, now there's not, like, because if you communicate poorly, you have two problems. You have the disagreement, and you just called me a piece of shit, for example, right? Like
I never said that. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I can speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what's important here is this goes back to the core values. Is one of our core values is trust. So, man, if you trust somebody like your wife or your best friend, and they go off on you one day, I lean into trust and compassion in that moment. I'm like, man, they may have been having a bad day, or maybe something spiraled out of control. And I'm not trying to make this into a psychological podcast. I just want to make sure I point out, like, this is business, and it'd be nice if we could just look at it as X's and O's, right? It's because moving around, it's a chessboard. This goes here. This makes this lever turns this. but we're in the human industry. We're not just, it's not just tech, right? This is a very human heavy organization. So we can't just look at everything as X's and O's. We have to get used to is getting used to people disagreeing with us and saying unskillful words about us, even if it seems personal, and just be like, okay, moving on. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, as the leader of a business, for everybody that's watching this podcast and the general managers, what you're going to see happen often is you're juggling a lot of parts, and your customers and your staff can only see so many parts, and you can give them more information, but they're not going to understand it because they're not living it. But as an owner, you have, or a general manager, you have many things to decide upon, like your reputation if you make the wrong decision, the financing, how are you going to pay these bills? Your staff, how are you going to pay the staff if you close, right? How are they going to collect their money? Like, there's so many other moving parts as an owner that you see that you can't really tell people unless they've been in those shoes before. And the hard part is recognizing that staff and clients don't see those moving parts. They get mad at you, and you can't sit there and be like, well, man, you don't get, these are why. Then it turns into an arguing contest and a slinging mud contest, and it can go nowhere. So in my opinion, it's like, Ian always says this. I'm like, hey, we gathered it. He says we're doing the best we can with the information we have. But like, what I love about that is it makes me think about, we've gathered so much information, and this is the decision we came to as a team, and I will take the blow for it, right? And just use me as an example, but this is where we're going. I hope you agree. And if you don't like it, I'm happy to talk to you individually, but please speak up if you want to talk. Otherwise, thank you for supporting us. And like, that's really the message that always has to go out. Otherwise, it's you be answering a million emails, but nobody ever wants to. Often people don't reach out. They reach out later or build resentment. And those ones that you give the opportunity to, and they do something later, it's like, you got to let it go. They had the chance. Give people the opportunity to speak, and then do the best you can with that information, and then move on.
Yeah. I think you nailed it too, Mike. It's like, a lot of times there's you know, I don't want to use I'm not using the word ignorance pejoratively. It's like, there's just a picture that they might not have, right? And it's understandable that without the information, you know, you can even see if it's a client or if it's a staff member and they're upset about something. Without that information, them being upset makes perfect sense. You know, and I think you know, one thing I think most problems stem from a communication breakdown, some sort of breakdown in communication or the information chain. And the issue is, we can't always give everyone all the information we want to. So I agree with Mike. At some point, it's just like, and I love what you said about the core values. It's like, the core values are there for a reason. And if they're not, if you just have them scribbled on your wall or in a pamphlet somewhere, then they're not real, you know. And this is like, you really have to be committed to living and not just within the walls of your business. Like, you know, and not to sound high and mighty here, because it can come off this way, and I don't intend it to. I've had to change my life a lot, and and I've had to change decisions that I might have made differently because of the core values that we have at Easton, right? Like, I have to actually live my life within those core values. And if you do, then assuming positive intent in other people, trusting people, right? Like that becomes a massive part of this whole project. And you know, and so, yeah, I would just double down on everything he said. And it's not always easy, right? I think that's the other piece. Like, a lot of times, like, I have to check myself. There's a lot of that happens. Someone's upset with me. I said something stupid, or someone thinks I said something stupid, or someone has something not nice to say about the way I've done things.
Back up here. Ian checks himself way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, because I always, you know, like, I want to, like, I don't want to, look, like, a lot of the times I look at insecurity and I think about this, and we all have it, right? And it's the root. I think at the end of the day, it's one of the main causes of poor behavior, whatever that is. And sometimes just taking that extra minute to be mindful and understand why it is you're feeling a certain way and explore it, just even if it's like, it could be like a superpower, right? To not be reactionary immediately. But I think it gets back to the point that your initial question, Elliot, is like, how do you disagree? And it's hard. It ain't easy, but we have to do it.
And I don't think we have to do it as much anymore, but in the beginning, we used to have to write rules to the meetings on the board of every meeting, right? I think for like a year or two, we did that, correct?
Yeah, it's a real, and Larry Dressler told us we wouldn't have to do it forever, but he said it'll become ingrained.
Explain that a little, Mike, like how we
Yeah,
had to do that. You had to write
course.
rules to meetings, and this helped us disagree, right? Because you had these things sitting on the board. Go ahead.
100%. So you just start the meeting with let's build our agreements today, and then everybody goes around the room and builds them. And
What were some of them?
we redid it, by the way, this year for our yearly offsite because it's been a while, so we wanted to make sure we revisited it to make a point. But some of them that we fall into are like no interrupting, don't take things personally, respond with tact, equal participation. Those just to name a few that really helped. There's a couple other ones that were really good, but this is huge before you start a meeting. So if you start the meeting with those agreements, that means, and you already have your core values in place, you're bringing all these people into that meeting, and now they feel safe because everybody's agreed that they're going to do these things in this meeting. They're going to make sure they take care of that person, make sure they respond tactfully, make sure we don't take things personally so you can say things. And ideally, those agreements create a safe place for people to actually disagree.
Yeah.
They just have to recognize, this was the hardest thing for me. You have to recognize when people disagree with you, like, okay, cool, we're still going this way. Don't try to fix their problem. Hear them out and be open-minded to change. Again, I'm going to repeat this. Hear them out. Be very open-minded to pivot from off your original decision, right? But if you can't, if you're not going to, don't sit there and feel bad and try to fix their problems. They know they get to disagree, and maybe the mind will change, maybe it won't. And if it doesn't, they leave their resentment in the room, they commit and walk out together. Like, this part is key, not only for that person that wants to disagree, but for the leader that has to recognize that because somebody disagrees with you doesn't mean they don't like you. I'm a minority owner in another business, and I disagree sometimes. I'm like, no, I'm totally committed to this, but I just want to let you know why I don't agree with it, but I'm behind you. And that can be challenging on both ends.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about staff, guys. Let's shift a little bit to staff. How did we deal with who to let go, when to let go, when to bring back, and all of that? So, because that's a pain, right? Like, with core values, you say you love people and you care about everyone. So what was that part like, staffing during COVID and just bad times in general?
I think big picture, I'll go first, Ian, then I'd like to hear what you have to say. Obviously, like, big picture for me was we had to cut down to 15 people out of 130 paid staff. And then we just had everybody on Zoom, and it was just the people on the background that stayed on that could keep the company running. But that being said, for COVID, we really made sure we did the math. We went in through every employee, and we realized, like, the part-time staff that we were letting go, they were going to make more on unemployment than they were with us at the time because unemployment was so good. And most of the staff are super part-time. So we're like, this is going to benefit you. So most of the staff are like, cool, I'm down and I'm happy to volunteer if you need me to do something. So that actually worked out nicely because the government actually did a good job with funding, maybe too good for too long, but that's a different story.
That's a different topic.
But
this podcast.
It was to keep enough so the business could stay afloat in the back end and make sure we did the math that everybody involved wouldn't get screwed by money. The only ones that got screwed really were Amal and Elliot for a little while, but I think we figured that out later on.
Yeah, no, 2020 sucked.
Yeah.
2021 was better for sure, but 2020 sucked. Yeah, it was awful.
So that was how COVID looked. And the hardest part there, for me at least, was some people are still upset that, like, man, I wanted to help. It's like, you wanted to help, but not in the way we needed you to. And you were just looking for collect money. We didn't have the money to give you at the time. And that part was challenging, still dealing with some legacy issues there. I don't really have specifics, but how to choose the right people to do the job that we needed done and having to put the other people on the side.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you hit some really good things here. We took care of our people the best as possible, right? It's whether it was unemployment or how else, the people, the government helped a lot with the PPP. And then from my perspective here, I guess I could chime in. You as the business owner, you gotta eat it, man. Like that's how it worked out for a little bit. Amal and I had to eat it, and that's just what it was. So we were able to eat it though, because the structure we have in place, for example, with our bank accounts, is we have rules, right? We don't go below certain amounts in the bank accounts, and that's how it works. Yes, Mike?
And we kept a lot more in there during COVID. We didn't touch anything during COVID.
No touching anything. Exactly. Yes. So you have to be able to set that up from the perspective of a financial sense. For example, and it's different per school, right? Like our bigger schools, Denver, Boulder, Centennial, they have to have more money sitting in the bank accounts. Our smaller schools have to have less money sitting in the bank accounts so that they're always operational. Even now to this day, it's still the same, right? We don't go below certain numbers, correct?
Yeah, and some takeaways for the people listening on the finance side. Like there's a couple ways to do this. Like PPP helped. There's also the loans you could have taken, but we try to do it without hurting the loan, without taking the loans. So there's ways to finagle it, but
we took the loans.
we didn't use them.
We didn't use them. We pay the interest, Mike.
Pay the interest. But yeah, I think the finance side is really clutch for an owner to pay attention to, like having a good bookkeeper. And ideally, I think a finance mentor, someone that can help guide you through the banking details when things like this happen. That was big for us, like somebody to help navigate all the ins and outs on the finance and legal side. I think it's really important for anybody that owns a business to have a mentor or at least a legal advisor and a tax and finance advisor. Those will go a long way in making sure that stuff is figured out so you can concentrate on the product.
Yeah, you pay good money for accountants and you pay good money for lawyers. And let's understand, Mike said bookkeeper in there as well. Our accountant does not do our books, right? Like there are.
Yeah, well, there's a CPA side and there's our finance side.
Right. But just so everyone can understand, because a lot of times accountants say they can do books for the smaller businesses, and yeah, they can do books at $300 an hour, and bookkeepers are $50, right? $50 an hour for most bookkeepers, and for a small business that I would say most martial arts schools are. Guys, any other tips that you would give as running through difficult times? How we dealt with COVID, how we made decisions? Any other tips? We just follow the accountability chart, the core values, and that's how we do it. But what else would you say for people?
I definitely, this is going to sound, and I don't. Again, this could sound like I'm talking from speaking in platitudes, and it's not the goal, but you have to put in the work beforehand, right? You really have to invest in your people and your culture, and you have to do, and again, it's got to be real, like you have to really genuinely care about the people who attend your schools and the people who work at your academies, or your whatever business it is, and you have to sometimes tell them, you just have to let people know that you care about them, and if you do this for long enough, people, because when this happened, man, people were coming out of the woodwork to help. They wanted to see us survive, right? This was a very it was one of the, throughout the entire pandemic, for me, one of the brightest things was seeing how much this, what Easton is in people's lives, and for the people who work at Easton and the people who attend our, part of our community. So it's just never forgetting that you're in the people. This is a people business, right? And any business is the people business, even tech, right? At the end of the day, it's human beings, and you have to pour into your culture, and it can't be an afterthought. And if you do that, like when things go wrong, which, life is unpredictable, you'll have an army of people who are there to lift you up. So I think it's a lot of that work comes long before the actual moment, March 13th. But I think all the things we've already spoken about, like that's like more of a general, nebulous point, but like, man, the communication, right? Like we were able to communicate on a dime. I remember being amazed through this. I think if you get anything from this episode, like really having your accountability chart. Like there's a book called The E-Myth, and one thing I always think about, it's not what there's this idea that happens where it's like, oh, a business starts off as a little infant and then it grows and eventually one day is mature. It's like, no, the best businesses start off as mature businesses, right? With that in mind, like you have an idea, a skeleton of the roadmap where you want to go, and how you want to develop. And if you plan all of that stuff out, right? The communication, the who's in charge of what, the roles, everything is much more clear, and it's much more easy to execute when it matters. Because the truth is, when COVID happened, it was super, super muddy, right? I mean, the waters themselves were muddy, right? But since our communication and our systems were on point, it made everything much more bearable. And that's really what got us through it. It was the work, the organization that happened beforehand that was able to, we were able to, ultimately thrive, once this has all been said, all said and done. But so that's what I would say. It's the systems and the culture. Like,
I want to touch on culture here for a second, Ian. We have clients that work with us, and most people when they contact us, they want leads, right? They want my marketing is off, right? My marketing is off. There's got to, who do you use for SEO? How do you do Facebook ads? And we don't touch that. We don't touch that. The first thing we touch is culture, because that is what made us survive the pandemic.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
At the start of it all, that is what made us survive the pandemic. So that's where we go first, always. Mike, from your perspective, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I'll just kind of agree with what Ian said, but just kind of holistically looking at it, yeah, culture is first, and that's comes from leadership all the way down, right? Like whatever the leadership does, the team's going to do. So that's important, that the culture's on point and the leadership's living those core values and treating their people well and listening and communicating with their people. So, and then with the culture in place, obviously you have to have, we're not going to go into product, but you have this incredible martial arts that are willing to evolve and improve with time. Like you can't have a fixed mindset around your martial arts. You have to be willing to grow and learn and not think your way is the right way, but that's not really my area. I'm an operations person. As you can see, Ian's very culture centered. He's also great at operations, but as far as the operations side go, we have the operations just so we have systems to hold up all those things. So how do we communicate? Voxer. How do we give action items? Traction tools. How do we want to make sure something's in writing? Email, right? We just have our touch points, and then we have levers we pull to make other levers move. And you just have to make sure you know what those levers are in your company so you can make sure action happens immediately. Whatever it is, and it takes time to build. And I think it's really challenging if you build it when you have 3, 4, 5 schools. It's much easier to build these at the very beginning. So if you have one school, one business, go in now and make the changes and just put something together, throw something on the chalkboard, right, or the whiteboard, and just start working with it. And just be willing to iterate, and you'll get there quickly. Read the books, keep learning, have mentors.
And we're here to help.
Yeah,
That's what Easton.Online does.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, that's what we're here for. We are here to help with all of this. So if you are interested, if you need help, fill out, go to the website, get us your email. We'll contact us. This is what we do. We take, and you, with Easton.Online, you get everything of ours. You get to see our core values. You get to see our accountability chart. You get our operations in our curriculum. You get our SOPs, and you get to then, your SOPs cannot be our SOPs. So let's just be clear, right? You have a different school and different things going on. So, but you get to see what SOP, standard operating procedure, what all of that looks like. So if you need help with it, let us know. That is why we are here. And yes, it will also grow your school in good times, right? It is not just about the bad times. So it will grow the school in good times. It will save you greatly in bad times. And yeah, I don't think we have anything else, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
That was great, Ali. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, that was great, guys. So Mike, Ian, thanks. Are you guys done for the day? What do you got? Mike, you done? Ian, you got to teach, right?
Yeah. Yep. I have to teach.
So I have to lift and make dinner.
You have to lift and make dinner.
My kids at jiu-jitsu right now.
What, your kids are at jiu-jitsu? Nice. So guys, that's it. As always, hit us up if you need help. You know, if you know someone that needs help, share the podcast. We are here. That's why we do this whole thing. And that's it. I got nothing else. Thanks,
Sweet.
guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Mike.
Good day.